Hi everyone, this video is to go over the graphic organizer on cell membrane transport. I love this graphic organizer because it helps break things down in a way that helps you conceptualize all of the nitty-gritty specifics that we've been talking about in our notes. So when we're talking about cell membrane transport and the way things move in and out of the membrane, there are two main categories. Think of these as families, okay? One of them requires energy and one of them does not require energy, okay? The way I taught my classes about this is when you're mad at someone and you're passive aggressive, you just ignore them and it doesn't really cause you to use a lot of energy. However, when you are actively fighting with them, you are using a lot of energy. So, active transport would help if I spelled that right. Active transport requires energy, okay? Passive transport is like passive aggressive. It does not require energy. The reason why passive transport does not require energy is because everything goes from a high to a low concentration. This is what we were practicing in our osmosis virtual activity where we were trying to figure out what was in the beaker. If the cell got larger, water was moving from a high to a low concentration, and that was a hypotonic solution, okay? So anytime we're going from an area of a lot of stuff or a high concentration to a low concentration, it's passive transport and there is no energy required, okay? There are three types of passive transport. The first type is simple diffusion. This is where we are looking at small and uncharged particles, okay? Small and uncharged particles move through the membrane from a high to a low concentration. Examples of these would be oxygen or carbon dioxide, okay? So in simple diffusion, it's a form of passive transport. It does not require energy. It's going from a high concentration of stuff to a low concentration of stuff until it reaches equilibrium or homeostasis. And examples of that are oxygen and carbon dioxide. The second type is osmosis. Essentially, this is just the diffusion of water, okay? This is when we move water from an area of high concentration of water to a low concentration of water, or from an area of low solute to high solute, so low salt or sugar, etc., okay? So in osmosis, we are talking about not energy being used, still moving from a high to a low concentration of water, and it is going to be also from a low solute to a high solute. The last form of passive transport is facilitated diffusion. So in simple diffusion, these are small and uncharged particles. In osmosis, we're talking about water. But in facilitated diffusion, these molecules are a little bit bigger, or maybe they're charged. Maybe they're negatively or positively charged. And they want to go from a high to a low concentration, but they need a little bit of a push. Well, in facilitated diffusion, they can't just simply move through the membrane like in simple diffusion and osmosis. Instead, they have to be using protein channels or a channel protein to be pushed through, okay? Examples of things that need to be pushed through using facilitated diffusion are glucose, amino acids, and anything charged, okay? So all of these ones are not requiring energy, and they're all moving from a high to a low concentration. Simple diffusion, small and uncharged particles. Osmosis, water. Facilitated diffusion, large or charged particles that are still moving from a high to a low concentration. Now with active transport, this requires energy. Think of when you're in an active fight, you're using a lot of energy, either verbally or physically, fight someone on something, okay? Active transport requires energy. There are two types of active transport, and both of them go from a low concentration to a high concentration, okay? So this is different. This is like moving from a class period where there's very few students to a class period where there's a lot of students. Rather than moving from a big class to a little class and being able to get more one-on-one attention. Instead, you're moving from a small class with a lot of room to a big class with not a lot of room. That's going to require energy, okay? So the two types of this are direct active transport and bulk active transport. Okay? In direct active transport, we are moving from a low to a high concentration through a protein channel, okay? In bulk active transport, we are moving from a low concentration to a high concentration, but these are large items or a lot of items. And there's two ways that this can happen, either endocytosis or exocytosis. In endocytosis, the membrane folds around the particle, and it makes a vesicle or a vacuole, and it is brought into the cell, okay? Endo, in. In exocytosis, the vesicle or vacuole folds the material out of the cell, okay? So two big things here. We've got active and passive. Passive always moves from a high to a low concentration. It does not require energy. In active transport, we go from a low to a high concentration, and it does require energy. Here are the three types of passive transport. Here are the two types of active transport. And endocytosis is when the vacuole folds into the cell, and exocytosis is when the vacuole folds out of the cell. If you